Conversations with Nicole. Let's talk about it. Tell me all about it. I'm here. I wanna know what's on your mind. Ooh, the world needs to hear from you, and I'm so glad to have a conversation to reach the nation. And it's all about you. We'll help each other to discover innovative ways to positively change the world. Let's talk about, let's talk about, yeah. Let's talk about conversations with Nicole.
Greetings. Welcome to Conversations with Nicole. I am Nicole Everett, your host. And Conversations with Nicole is a talk show based in Tallahassee, Florida, focused on connecting the community through conversations. And today is what I call Wellness Wednesday, which is an opportunity for you, me, and my guests to chat about something interesting and intriguing. And tonight, our topic is trauma-informed care among people of color. My very special guest is Miss Keyunda Washington, who is no stranger to Conversations with Nicole, but it's been a while since she's been on. And so I'm super excited and delighted to have her on. But before I hear from her, I want to hear from you. Where are you tuning in from? Let us know in the comments what city and state you are tuning in from so we can give you a shout out. And please know that your comments and questions are welcome. We are live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn, and we fully expect to engage with you in conversation tonight. So please tag a friend, like, share, and let them know they need to be on here along with you so we can have this delicious conversation. All right. I see Tara is on with us. Thank you for being here. I saw her the other day at the library. So thank you for being on here. Appreciate you so much. Well, I know there'll be some other folks joining us. So I'm going to go ahead and share some of Miss Washington's bio. Keyunda Washington, referred to by family and friends and clients alike as Key, is a licensed mental health counselor who is passionate about addressing mental wellness. Her practice, holistic healing counseling, was founded on the principal beliefs of mental health is interconnected with our physical and spiritual well-being. Therefore, the focus is to help clients align those elements for improved overall health. She affirms and serves all races and ethnicities. Her practice highlights the holistic health of students and working professionals who identify in the BIPOC community, with a specialty focus on Black individuals. She obtained her master's in clinical mental health counseling from Walden University in 2015. She studied psychology at both the associate and bachelor's levels at Darton College and Albany State University, respectively. And over the past decade, one of the main things her personal, postgraduate, and professional journeys identified for her was the need to represent Black health from the scope of being a Black client and a Black clinician. Her top interests are treating racial trauma, depression, and anxiety. And she is a mom. She also is a cat mom. And for self care, she enjoys receiving her own mental health counseling, spa massage, and acupuncture. Y'all help me welcome Miss Key Washington.
Hi,
Hey, hey. How you doing?
I'm great. How are
Good.
you?
I'm doing well, doing well, doing well. So glad to have you on. I'm loving this hairdo, girl. You're rocking
Thank
it.
you. Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes. So tell the people who may not know, who is Key Washington? Not what you do, but who are you in your own words?
Who am I in my own words?
Yeah.
Not what I do. So I'm just a girl. No, I'm kidding. So I really enjoy like horror and thrillers. So I guess surprise, especially with my background, I really like psychological thrillers.
Okay.
I enjoy roller coasters, and just kind of helping my daughter like grow and explore, and trying to expand my horizons with travel. So those
Okay.
are a few of my interests there.
Nice. All right. So since you said you like psychological thrillers, I don't know if this would be considered a psychological thriller, but I gotta ask, did you see Sinners?
I did.
What'd you think?
It was great. The part of the movie that stood out the most to me, that aspect where they were in the barn. I think that was the barn setting where kind of like everything transcended together as they were coming together through music. That was a very powerful
Yes,
scene to me.
that was my favorite part too.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes. No, it was a great movie. I did, outside of the vampire stuff, I really, really enjoyed it.
I love gore too. I love vampire movies and TV
Oh,
series. Yeah.
okay. All right. So just talk a little bit about what prompted you to start your practice.
Yeah, so for me, part of it's twofold. For me, as a clinician, I wanted more autonomy and control over the type of clients that I work with and the type of challenges that we process in therapy.
Mhm.
So I also just kind of saw a need, like a gap when it comes to like providing care for people of color, but especially Black clients.
Mhm.
And so that really started it for me, just wanting to have that focus in my practice.
Nice. Okay, very good. Now, are you currently taking any new clients?
Yes, I am.
All right. Telehealth and in person?
Yes, via telehealth and in person.
Okay. All right. Insurance and private pay?
I'm paneled with most health insurance plans as well as a variety of employer assistance programs as well.
Okay. All right. So use that EAP.
Right.
Use it, use it, use it.
Mhm.
And you are no longer in Tallahassee, but in Tampa, but it's serving the entire state of Florida, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, very good. So just putting that out there for you all that here is a ready, willing, and able clinician to serve you. So all right. So, with that said, I want to share my disclaimer before we dive into this topic, and that is that all topics, past, present, and future on Conversations with Nicole, are for informational purposes only. They are not to be used as a diagnosis for treatment or answer to any personal issues related to the topic being discussed before, during, or after the program. All right. So, this is not counseling. Get with a counselor if you need to. All right. So, trauma informed care among people of color. Why is that a
Yeah.
thing? Why is that even a thing?
Yes. It's And I do feel like, I guess first I'll kind of start with the aspect of just receiving mental health care in general before I bring in the trauma aspect of it. I think us within the Black community, and of course I don't mean to speak for everyone, but as a collective, it has been pretty taboo to seek mental health counseling.
Mhm,
Kind of long since established that we don't talk to other people about our problems, and just the historical sense of just being marginalized within healthcare and
mhm.
a rightful lack of trust of the healthcare system.
Yeah.
So when it comes to trauma informed care, I think it's this specific area about Black trauma or people of color, like this specific type of trauma that we've experienced being oppressed.
Mhm,
And just historically speaking, how that transcends to us present day and how we're still dealing with the mental ramifications of, being enslaved, especially, just speaking, of course, for Black people. But I
mm,
think that targeting mental health care in a trauma informed way is very important.
mhm. No, it is. I think some of the systems in America specifically help to contribute to that, right?
Right.
Um,
Mhm.
and the need for that type of care.
Right.
Because oftentimes for people of color, the systems exacerbate situations, right? Instead of really helping um,
Yes.
in ways that they maybe propose that they help, right?
Mhm.
And so I think it would be maybe also helpful to kind of define what trauma informed care is for folks that might not be aware. But before we do that, let me just pause. I see my sister has joined us down in Miami. Thank you for being here, Shay. So, do you have like a definition for trauma informed care?
Yeah. So There's a lot of different modalities in mental health counseling, in terms of like how we work with trauma. And
Mhm.
part of that is one, for me as a trauma therapist, I make sure that I'm not defining my client's experience for them. And I think that's really important because sometimes whenever people go through a traumatic event, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will have a specific, reaction to it or they define it a certain way. So
Mhm.
really working with my clients to figure out their narrative of what they've experienced, I think is really important to being sensitive in working with trauma.
Okay. All right. And so and I heard you in terms of modalities, but do you believe that even within our world that we can have more trauma informed services outside of counseling, but like even within some of these systems that we have to deal with on a daily basis?
Yeah. I mean, like kind of like the healthcare system, school systems, things like that.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I think that just kind of thinking about the school system and just kind of like how when we think about aspects, because I a good part of my career before I moved into private practice was working in the school system and working with at-risk youth. So how
Mhm.
we target things like bullying and how those things are handled, especially with people of color, those mental health programs that we have in the school, or even just really just anything that kind of targets and kind of brings community together. I think those type of things are really helpful too.
Yeah, for sure. I've most recently read about some trauma informed care more systemically. For instance, the governor of Hawaii has mandated that the state departments take a more trauma informed care approach to their staff and to the clients that they serve,
Mhm.
which is to me like monumental, right?
Yeah,
To have
absolutely.
that level of awareness to take into consideration like the things that you all may be doing within these systems that's like stressing people out,
Mhm.
that's triggering them, right? And so just total policy changes as it relates to all of that.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I know that might, in one instance might seem kind of extreme, but I think it makes for definitely a healthy community. Because you have that level of sensitivity towards your citizens and the people that you're serving.
Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm.
absolutely agree.
Okay. So, you and I talked about, maybe some labels and perceptions that, maybe we have to contend with as people of color. And so
Mhm.
that can contribute tremendously to the trauma that we may experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've
Mhm.
had clients, especially if it's their first time in therapy. One of the
Mhm.
first things they say is, I never thought I would end up here, needing counseling, or they'll say, I'm not crazy, they've kind of found themselves, coming into counseling. And one of the biggest things is that, when we're talking about like a label, like a mental health diagnosis,
Mhm.
and so one thing I share with my clients, especially when I'm working with my clients who are utilizing their EAP, I
Mhm.
make it if it's not required of me to to give them a mental health diagnosis, I don't add that to their medical record. We
Okay.
may, work through treatment and kind of discuss the impact of like certain symptoms that's associated with that diagnosis. But
Mhm.
um also when we are working with insurance, I'm sure to let them know like it's a requirement that I provide a diagnosis so they kind of know what they are, receiving.
Mhm.
And I make it a point to, of course, give the most appropriate diagnosis to what they're coming in for, but
Mhm.
also the least intrusive. Like if they're coming in with let's say for instance, like they're struggling with depression and anxiety and it's related to an adjustment, I'll
Mhm.
kind of go with that diagnosis as opposed to something that could be considered, especially if they're if they feel just apprehensive about being labeled and having a medical record following them. So I do have that upfront discussion about how that works.
Okay. Now, what's your thoughts around maybe misdiagnosis, maybe counselors that might rush to a diagnosis.
Mhm.
Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I definitely think that something that I think is commonly misdiagnosed happens to pertain to trauma, especially in regards to like cluster B diagnosis. And with that, that's, personality disorders, things along the narcissistic spectrum, borderline. And so for me as a trauma therapist, I see that a lot through the lens of just trauma. So I'm less likely to add a personality disorder. But I think that, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question to me? I think I got lost.
So I think that sometimes we can, as it relates to uh, the labels,
The labels.
maybe we clinicians can maybe rush to a diagnosis, and so
Yeah.
that
There you
can
go.
also be traumatic, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think when something isn't as clear cut, holding off on or labeling it as a working diagnosis is more helpful.
Hmm.
And if you're not quite sure of which diagnosis fit, definitely kind of like holding off and, of course, accurately diagnosing, but, maybe not adding a label until you're sure that it applies.
Hmm. So I go to counseling. Have been going for about 2.5 years. Uh, in the 23rd month of going to counseling, okay, had a major breakthrough and had been telling my counselor probably maybe about 9 to 10 months prior to that, like, I'm cured, I'm healed, I'm good, I don't need to come back. And she
Mm.
was like, no, you need to come back, come back. Well,
Yeah.
and there was something that happened that triggered this whole thing within me that I didn't even know was like a thing from when I was 15 years old. Okay.
Mhm.
And so it's something to like peel those layers back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it takes time
It does.
because oftentimes we don't know how deeply rooted these traumatic experiences are within our lives, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when clients are coming to therapy, one, it takes, you're coming and you're talking to a complete stranger, about very sensitive things. Like you definitely need that rapport, and that sense of safety to be able to challenge and bring things out of your clients.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. All right, let me pause. A few more folks have joined us. I got to say hello. My mom is here. Thank you for being here, Ma. I love you. Miss Sharice in Atlanta, thank you for being here. Tracy Gole here in Tally, thank you for joining us. And my girlfriend Belinda down in Miami, thank you for being here. We are talking trauma informed care among people of color. Again, questions and comments are very much so welcome. So please, y'all, chime in, chime in, chime in. So, trauma, right? Trauma is self defined because two people can go through the same experience,
Hmm.
but one person can count it as traumatic, and the other may not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even in addition to that, it's the reaction to it. Some people tend to more internalize traumatic events and
Mhm.
kind of take it out on themselves, whereas other people externalize it and kind of take it out on other people. So even the responses to that differ.
Yeah. So how do you navigate that? How do you manage that as a counselor, as a clinician, in terms of
Hmm.
helping somebody work through those things?
Well, one, I definitely, especially in the intake appointment, I let clients know because sometimes I get clients who come in and they're wanting to work through grief, or they may actually just label it as trauma. I get that a little bit more often, and
Mhm.
then during our assessment, I find out that they are wanting to work through grief and loss. And so I feel like maybe like last year I definitely mishandled this, and it was a really hard learning curve to something that I immediately corrected. I worked with the client who came in and told me about the unfortunate death of her son and, how he died, she just really opened up and just kind of let it all out, something that she hadn't done
Mhm.
at the end, only for me to tell her that I couldn't assist because that's not my area of expertise. So that's one thing I learned, is that if I learned that earlier in the assessment, I
Mhm.
kind of take a moment to interject and I explain, that though I'm a trauma specialist, that's not a specialty area for me. And
Mhm.
if we do continue to work together, I'm not a grief and loss specialist that'll take you through the stages of grief in a traditional model, that denial, the anger, working through to acceptance. We can really work through your narrative and have a space to open and process it.
Mhm.
But if you're looking for something else, I'd be sure to let my clients know that before they open up and reveal such vulnerable things. The
Mhm.
look on her face, the devastation, as she was already crying when I said that. And I just
Mhm.
knew I wouldn't do her justice if I continued to work with her, because I just couldn't help with that.
Gotcha.
Mm.
So when you mention grief and loss, I'm one of those that believes we really don't grieve as much as we should.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
Grief and loss, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we process that and tend to that as much as we
Right.
should. And what I mean is there are many things that happen throughout the course of these lives, these journeys that we are on,
Mhm.
disappointments, hopes, dreams, aspirations that are unfulfilled,
Right.
um, breaks in fellowship, uh,
Mhm.
death. So
Yeah.
I think death is one that, yes, is pretty understandable. You grieving, but there's so
Mhm.
many other things that we lose, right?
Right.
And we don't, I think, properly grieve those things, right?
Yes.
And so that can be traumatic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've had quite a few people to say that exact phrase. I don't think I ever properly grieved. It's just this notion that we have to keep pressing forward.
Mhm.
Um, I had an experience like that with the loss of my great great aunt. It's been about a decade now, and I didn't know how impacted I was until the day of the funeral itself.
Mhm.
A few years leading up to her passing, we used to be close when I was younger.
Mhm.
The family member, we were always over her house. She had all her grandkids and just things like that over. And we had a falling out, and I just didn't think I was going to be as impacted by it. But I broke down at her funeral.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it really is that aspect. And then life just kind of continued on, after that.
Mhm. Mhm. And so, uh, I think part of that is also from these traumas, right? Like you said, the traumatic encounter experience happens, and
Mhm.
we cope or deal in the midst of, but sometimes we don't process that stuff. You know,
Yeah.
like you said, life goes on. We got to go to school, we got to go to work, we got to take care of these kids or our
Yeah.
spouse or our family or friends or whatever, right? It's on to
Mhm.
the next. But we haven't really properly grieved that thing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I've had, even just kind of thinking about like the aspect of, grief and loss in a rather unorthodox way. Like if we lose a version of someone that we're used to them being, whether they have,
Mhm.
an illness like dementia, we're like just watching them fade away, and the toll that takes. I've had clients to say that, we just kind of take on the burden, of kind of like trying to balance work and kids and caring for an ill family member. So it
Mhm.
really is like, it's traumatic. It's like you're watching someone, slowly fade, and you also have like your own trauma from that as well.
Absolutely. We got a few folks that have joined us, and Mr. Solomon has a comment that I want to share. So, Miss Jeanette in Miami Gardens, thank you for being here. And Solomon, with this, I think he's in the witness protection program with this new account, SSG Sumter Junior Jackson. Thank you for being here, Solomon. So his point, he said, very true. I think chattel slavery is part of us not being able to do a lot of things, even including grieving. That era took a toll on our people emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, etc. I would agree. What your thoughts? Any thoughts, Key?
You summed it up perfectly. I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, yeah,
true.
yeah. So, I think this aligns with what you and I talked about in terms of upbringing and some of those things that have been passed down out of slavery, um,
Mhm.
in terms of our not being able to be emotional, right? Like having to be strong or believing we had to be strong, not
Mhm.
having to suck it up, right? And what has that caused, from a emotional, psychological, physical, spiritual standpoint within us, and what has been passed down to our young
Mhm.
people, right?
I would definitely say for me, I did grow up in my mom was a single mom.
Mhm.
And just the aspect of, of course, at that time, I didn't think of it this way, but now in hindsight, it's, what was modeled is that, you carry the load, you push through, it's the aspect of, there is no, central father figure in the home to help, share the burden and the load. So with me being a single parent to my daughter, and then realize how much I would shoulder and where that impact came from. That is on me to and it was also me being a first time mom, but it was just the aspect of I have to protect her in this way. I have to do everything. I have to pick up early from daycare. I don't want her in daycare long hours. I have to do this and do that, and it really weighs on you. It really does.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, again, this, I think, and I don't know if your mom witnessed something like that, but certain things kind of get passed down, right? And
Mhm.
so, but again, that can also be traumatic to always have to be strong or appear to be strong all the time,
Mhm.
right?
Very much so.
Yeah. So how do we navigate that in terms of that trauma informed care for people of color?
I think finding that sense of community is really important. And, knowing that family isn't just related to blood, like really having that network and that system of people that you can rely on, which is
Yeah.
something that I developed, back when I was in Tallahassee, just having, friends who really stepped in and helped and gave me a break. Or so it's just really important to find your village.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Now, one of the other things that you and I talked about was the professionalism of clinicians, especially
Yeah,
clinicians of color, and
right.
how sometimes the clientele can look to their counselors as friends instead
Mhm.
of licensed professionals. So you want to say
Right.
that a little bit?
Yeah, I've had, I specifically had a former client to tell me earlier on that, she kind of expected, something a little different from me because a previous therapist was more like a homegirl to her.
Mhm.
And, we did have a direct conversation about it where, it's like, I understand that, that I'm Black, we're both Black, but this is, a professional relationship. I've
Mhm.
had clients who, they'll make little comments if they find out that because I do to a small degree, will share a little bit of myself, realize that I have a daughter. I was like, oh, maybe, we can get the kids together. So it's
Mhm.
like kind of having to really rein that in, or people who,
Right.
in a in another world, we probably could be friends, but I really am a goody two shoeser. So it's like it would never happen, unfortunately. But there's that aspect of, that sense of someone that you can see yourself being friends with, especially, my style of therapy, though it's structured, it's also very relational. So they get this sense of, and I think it is a form of, it's a relationship. It is a form of you can even call it a form of friendship where you are able to have this back and forth with someone who's open and receptive and, where you can kind of be vulnerable with. So
Right. Okay. Cool. So we are a little at halfway through our conversation. So for those of you who are just tuning in, I am on with Miss Keyunda Washington, who is a licensed mental health counselor here in Florida, Tampa specifically, and we're talking trauma-informed care among people of color. And we've talked about what trauma-informed care could potentially look like, what trauma is, how it's defined, labels and perceptions that oftentimes folks have when you talk about going to a counselor. Don't want to be labeled as crazy. There's nothing wrong with me.
Yeah.
You know, I got Jesus.
Hmm.
So let's touch on that a little bit. Can spirituality and medicine coexist? Can you have Jesus and go see a counselor?
Yeah, absolutely. I do have a lot of clients who, who consider themselves like more spiritual versus religious.
Mhm.
Um, but they do tend to prefer more holistic measures first. So we
Okay.
do go down that route. But a lot of my clients who may have initially been anti-medications, it's almost like there's this aspect of not knowing what the side effects are going to be, or
Mm.
if it's going to help them or not. And I let them know that even if you get a psychiatric evaluation, there's no obligation for you to take medications, or if you take them and you decide that it's not for you, of course you have to properly get off of them, but you're not mandated to stay on them. So I
Right.
guess kind of talking about the control and choice in it allows some clients to go that route, and it happened to have been beneficial for them.
Okay. Cool. 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 Now, one of the other things we discussed was, there are definitely more non-black counselors than there are black counselors. And so one of the things that can also be a contributing factor to not really getting the care that you desire as a person of color is the lack of cultural competency.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've had quite a few clients to, basically it's like it's a breath of fresh air, finding a black clinician and one who's professional as well. And just talking about previous experiences where they was like, you just get it. That's all they say, you get it. I don't have to explain what it is to be black or
Hmm.
try to, they spend so much time trying to, explain their experience and maybe even feel like they have to justify it before they even really get to process, what they're trying to work on in therapy.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. So Solomon, he had a comment. He said, "This sister made me think of something. Does it benefit Black folks better to find counselors that look like them? I'm thinking that our people can relate with others better than someone from another race." Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
really do. I really
yes.
do think so. But
Mhm.
also, even it's funny because I'll have clients who look at me kind of sideways when I say this, but I try my best not to even generalize the Black experience. And
Mhm.
so, one thing I'll say, especially in the intake appointment, is, I don't want to presume your ethnicity. And I've had clients be like, I'm just black. I'm like, there's the aspect of, do you identify as Jamaican, Haitian, just different cultural experiences that are different, that I feel like we may have to incorporate into therapy. The
No,
same thing when I work with Hispanic clients, who identify as Cuban or Dominican. It's, something important to be aware of.
it absolutely is important to be aware of because there are those differences and variations. I mean, just
Hmm.
because you speak Spanish, doesn't mean you're Cuban or Mexican or Puerto
Hmm.
Rican or what have you. And
Right.
Cubans will get highly offended if you call them Puerto Rican.
Hmm.
Haitians if you call them Bahamian or Jamaican or something else
Hmm.
other than what they are. So
Right.
yes, those nuances are important and things that we need to definitely be mindful of.
Right.
Hmm. Hmm. So I know you serve a number of different clients from different backgrounds. Do you find that uh, traumas may uh, especially some of the racial trauma is more prevalent amongst maybe folks that are fully, well, I won't say fully American, but American born. You know what I'm saying? Not that have ancestry from another country like Jamaica or, an island or something like that. Do you find that those racial traumatic experiences are more deeply rooted?
Um, I'm not sure if I'll describe it as deeply rooted, but I would definitely say vastly different
Mm,
because I think whenever you have someone, and it's so funny because, when we think we're checking the box, it's Black/African American, and yet
mm,
we group that all together. But when we think about the aspect, I've had clients who deal with like assimilation and a culture, just that aspect of blending the culture of like where they're from with American culture, and it's definitely a different experience than kind of growing up in America within a
mm.
traditional Black household, especially if it was a single parent household. I do think those traumas are different.
Gotcha. Okay. So Solomon wants to know, do counselors low key do the same thing? I'm wondering if counselors prefer to deal with one group over another.
Do the same thing as in what?
Same race, probably. In
Deal with
terms
one
of
group over another.
and Solomon, give me correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I'm reading it, uh, do you have a preference in terms of clientele maybe that you deal with?
Oh, okay. I do. Although I do, it sounds like the the majority of my clients are Black. I do have some from other people of color who identify as Hispanic, and I do have some non-minority clients, but I do have a preference specifically to work with people of color, but especially Black clients.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So he said he had a physical therapist up in Connecticut where he is tell him that his office prefers Latino patients over other ethnicities due to that particular office being located in a predominantly Latin neighborhood. Hmm.
Yeah, I wouldn't tell I wouldn't tell someone that I prefer,
Right.
but I think by the way that I advertise and market myself, I think it's pretty apparent, what I specialize with. So those type of clients typically gravitate towards me.
Mm,
But I definitely wouldn't tell anyone that.
yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about modalities because I know that's something that is important, when you are treating your clients and just kind of seeing what works for them. So talk a little bit about some of the modalities that you use for your clientele.
Yeah, for me, I use a lot of narrative therapy, and cognitive processing therapy and trauma focused CBT. And I kind of go through each of those. Um, Primarily, I do use cognitive processing therapy, and it really is like a mixture of your traditional CBT, but through a trauma lens. And it's really breaking down internalized traumatic narratives that we have about ourselves that really have a really big influence on how we respond to different things.
Okay.
So, I like to provide psychoeducation to my clients on my approach so they have an understanding of what that process will look like in therapy. But it's more so just kind of taking that trauma sensitive approach to really identifying behaviors that they may have once served a purpose in terms of kind of helping us survive certain things, but are they conducive to what we're looking for now, whether it's romantic relationships, friendships, work environments? Like, are the type of things that we have learned growing up, do they help us now? So we really identify those narratives there.
Okay. So narratives, anything else that you use for your clients?
It's mostly within that lens. I'm a
Okay.
primarily CBT oriented therapist, so I gravitate towards a lot of things that incorporate that.
Okay. What about any like journaling or
Oh, absolutely. Within the cognitive processing approach, part of that is writing through your narrative. Some people don't like to write as much, so if they like to verbalize it, we'll take that route. But I do encourage clients to write out their narrative. And that's
Mm-hmm.
because, sometimes we kind of replay things in our brain a certain way and it kind of goes through this fixed loop. But as we're writing things down, we may find that other details that we may not focus on are a part of that narrative. And
Yeah.
so when we're processing that in therapy, as a therapist, as I'm listening to the narrative, whether they're reading it out or summarizing it, I kind of take note of like other things that pop up because I think that that highlights that it's related in some way. So it's something to process through that trauma narrative.
Gotcha. So I'm gonna get the viewers involved. Do any of you out there journal? Let us know in the comments. No judgment, safe space. Do any of you out there journal? And if you do you find it to be helpful? Do you find it to be helpful to sort through your thoughts? Do you find it to be helpful in getting your thoughts, your emotions out there as it relates to your experiences and encounters? Uh, do you find journaling to be difficult? I will raise my hand to that because I just, yeah, I have like a writer's block, if you will. It's like something has to happen in order for me to journal.
I'm the same way. And
Mhm.
also, I don't know how common it is, but whenever I have things stuck in my brain, I would talk to myself to get it out. Whether I'm
Okay.
riding in the car, whatever it is.
Okay. Is that one of the things that you encourage your clients to do?
I do. I was like, whatever your outlet is. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. All right. Solomon said, I used to many moons ago, but I got tired of writing. LOL. I get it. I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
I have been encouraged to not feel like I have to write a book because
Mhm.
that's probably what is the block for me because it's like I feel like I got to write every single detail, but maybe do bullets or
Mhm.
maybe have a picture on that particular day that's in my journal that represents whatever, whatever
Right.
is going on with me at the time. So there's some different ways that you can do it so it doesn't
Mhm.
seem so tasky or overwhelming, if you will.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 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 yeah. All right. Any other modalities? Any, I
There
know.
are other modalities. I don't use them. A pretty common one with treating trauma is EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Mhm.
So I do think there has some similarities to cognitive processing therapy, but of course with EMDR, I guess the best way to kind of describe it is slight form of hypnosis in a sense,
Mm,
and kind of bringing up those memories. But you definitely have to be trained in that in
yeah.
order to do that.
Okay. Are you familiar with tapping?
I am. I have not used it, but I'm familiar.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. There are a lot of things out there. So definitely we don't want to encourage folks to explore some of those things and
Mhm.
again see what works for you. I had someone on the show that did a tapping exercise and it
Mhm.
definitely um, kind of brought you down in terms of if you were kind of you know uh, like excited or anxious or what have you, just it shifted your focus, I'll say.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
There's also, I learned about this a few years ago. There's also like a form of trauma massage. It's
Mm,
not your traditional, relaxation massage. It's, as you're working through it with your therapist, your massage therapist, that is, they, wherever you're feeling the sensations in your body, that's where they touch. And the whole goal is to kind of push the trauma out of your body.
wow, interesting.
Mhm.
I think I've heard of that, but just I've not done it before. Uh,
Yeah.
Mr. Solomon, I talk to myself because I know that I'm never alone. Our Creator always hears us and He listens. That's just me, though. Okay, no, I
Mhm.
appreciate you sharing that. I talk to myself too, so you're not alone.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Warren Cave has joined us. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for being here, Warren. So, again, we're talking trauma informed care among people of color. We've been talking about some of the modalities out there. And when we talk modalities, we're talking about ways to treat trauma, right? Um, and specifically, you said you use the cognitive processing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And narratives is a lot of what you do, either
Right.
written and oral. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And the trauma focused CBT as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just thought about something that you mentioned earlier about, ways that, that in the community we can be more culturally sensitive. It made me think about when I was in grad school, there was like a section where we learned about um, you know, minorities and like what sort of things may come up and how it manifests in different cultures. And I
Uh-huh.
just remember I was like, I think we were like a blurb, like in terms of like Black people. Like I did not learn. There was rarely anything in there. There was more on um, other minorities than it was for Black people. So I think that one of the reasons why it could be so difficult to know how to properly work with people of color and especially Black clients is because it's not, unless something has changed since I've been in school, it's not really taught.
So, had you heard of Black psychology when you were in school?
Nope, absolutely not.
Okay, well, at FAMU, they take a Black psychology approach,
Mhm.
which definitely takes into account um, some of the systemic racism, not some of it, all of the systemic racism that Black folks in America have gone through. And it takes a more Afrocentric approach, which is more inclusive and collective, as opposed to individualism and materialism. And
Okay.
so having gone to FAMU, and I probably should have been
Mhm.
psych double a major. I was a business major, but I used to love to go sit in those psychology classes
Mhm.
because it was just so much that they taught about our experience here in America as Black folks that I had never heard before. So it was quite intriguing.
I could see that definitely being highlighted more in the HBCU versus the university that I went to. I
Yeah.
didn't. We weren't taught a lot about it.
For sure, for sure. All right. Solomon said, where can a massage therapist that specializes in trauma therapy be found? And is that a specialty or do all massage therapists learn that particular practice?
From my knowledge, it's a specialty,
Mhm.
and I think it's pretty rare to have that. But if you Google in your area, you may be able to see that it's like trauma touch therapy is essentially what it is.
Okay. All right. So research is Solomon. There might be somebody in Connecticut that might may be able to help you. Trauma touch therapy. All
Mhm.
right. Yes. I'm gonna ask some of the massage therapists that I know because I am curious about that for sure.
Mhm.
Hmm. So, spirituality of Black folks. I know that was another thing that we kind of touched on. Sometimes that the our spirituality can be something that other clinicians that are not of color don't understand, right?
Mhm.
We have a strong belief in uh many of us have a strong belief. I don't want to, make it a monolith, but uh in Christianity, and we may be talking about the spirit or the Holy Ghost, or something or another happening with us, in us, or what have you. And some might think we might have lost our minds, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think about that in a dual sense because, I do think that Black Christianity is a little different. And I think it's the aspect of internalizing, well, one, Christianity in a historical sense, I think, especially going back to the times of slavery, were like a way to shoulder, the burden, like the physical and the emotional, psychological burden, of being enslaved. And I feel like it's that same aspect. I was, very religious growing up. and the type who was in church every Sunday, Bible study, traveling with my church in the choir. I was really ingrained. And one thing that I saw was that there would be aspects of pulling some things from the Old Testament and applying them in new. So some things in the Old Testament were like the sacrifices that were made of like animals and their tithing, and now it's, you give tenfold, and just like the push of money. So for me, I didn't have a good experience in Black Christianity and Black church growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I actually kind of attribute some of my experiences to be a bit like a cult. So I think that just the aspect of, pushing people to give and like give their income tax refunds if they receive one, for the notion that they'll get it tenfold, I just think it's another form of control. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Gotcha. So Warren had a question. He wanted to know, has the question been asked, how does growing up where seeing and dealing with traumatic experience is just common? They've been traumatized but don't realize it until they're out of that society.
How does growing up we're seeing and dealing with traumatic
Mm-hmm.
things? Okay. So how is it just common? Okay. I think that it just kind of becomes the norm. I feel like whatever environment, it's that whole nature and nurture, like whatever environment you grow up in, that's what you internalize as being the norm. And you're right, like once you get out of it, you can see things as being a little bit different than, but sometimes you don't really realize, what you've experienced until you experience something different.
Mm-hmm. And so, for instance, with Warren's question, it may be that death was something that was commonplace in your neighborhood, right?
Okay.
Or people, getting beat up or
Right.
whatever the case may be, right?
Mhm.
And so, but you just think that's just how things are, right?
Mhm.
Until you go to a peaceful place where that's not happening,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
And then you recognize like everybody don't live like this.
Mhm. That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Um, just kind of thinking about the aspect of kind of growing up in like communities that may be like have a lower socioeconomic status, or you just kind of like grow up in the aspect of, like this is life, like you I guess don't realize that, sometimes having to, go without food or only being able to, eat certain things, like that's just kind of the norm until, like maybe it's not anymore. And you see like not everyone has that experience, or the aspect of, growing up in a single parent household and thinking that that's the norm. And so maybe you go to school and you see that there are other families who have two parents in the home. So it's just so many things that you may not recognize until you see something different.
Yeah, for sure, for sure, for sure. Thank you for that question, Warren. So I think we actually have covered all of the things that we talked about
Yeah.
in our notes. So was there anything else that we may have missed that you want to make sure we mention?
I'll just say that when it comes to receiving trauma care, for clients seeking that, to, really ask questions about the type of style and modality that the therapist uses. And just making sure that you feel comfortable, because, when you're working on something that's so vulnerable, it takes being able to feel safe and comfortable. And also the aspect of, sometimes, if there's not a certain sensitivity in working through trauma, it can lead to what we call re-victimization. Sometimes there's this thing about, people are acting with a victim, mentality around certain things, and just not allowing people to kind of process that, and that appropriate level of challenging or confrontation essentially is
Mhm.
really important, not to add to the trauma of making someone feel like, their experiences are invalid, or pushing too quickly or too hard for change.
No, that's a really great point. That pushing too hard for change, like there's definitely a level of compassion and patience that should go along with it, right?
Mhm.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Because we all process things differently.
Mhm.
Hmm. And you know, the processing piece is the work, and so giving folks the tools that they need to work through those things, right? Because there's some realizations that they may come to. They may recognize that some of the behaviors that they have
Mhm.
as adults are stemming from things that they experience as child
Mhm.
cases, adverse childhood experiences,
Right.
and that untreated trauma just
Mhm.
continues to uh, those behaviors continue to move forward. And while they may have served us well back then, they are not serving us well now. Right.
And that's one thing that I really focus on with my clients and my work is kind of working through generational trauma. Those things that, I think it's two general classes. Sometimes, people's like, oh, I'm not going to be like my mom, or I'm not going to be like my dad. And they're really kind of fighting these inner battles of, trying to do things differently. I always say nothing really brings up trauma, like, becoming a parent or being in some sort of close knit relationship where, we notice these things coming up. And when trauma is unhealed, we're replaying that same dialogue. And it's some subconscious or even unconscious way of trying to resolve what was unhealed from childhood.
Very, very true. Very true. All right. Solomon had a comment to Warren's question. He said, I think that goes back to the chattel slavery comment. Our ancestors weren't afforded the outlets that we have today. So that mindset of tolerating that kind of treatment became normal.
Right.
Agreed, agreed, agreed. Thank you for that comment, Solomon. All right. So I want to give you an opportunity to give some final remarks and tell folks how they can connect with you.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much for tuning in and having this conversation with me. As Nicole stated earlier, I am in the Tampa Bay area. So you're able to connect with me at HH Counseling on Instagram. My phone number there, 850-404-9002. And that's my website as well. I do offer in-person sessions for those in the Tampa Bay area, and I offer those on Tuesdays only.
All right. Very good. Very good. Very good. Well, this has been an intriguing conversation. Definitely want to keep this conversation going. So I am asking the viewers to please share this with somebody that you believe will benefit from the conversation to, chime in. We still will be taking comments and that sort of thing post the live discussion, but trauma informed care is important. We definitely need to be healing from any traumatic experiences, and we need to be grieving more. And
Mhm.
not that I'm saying we need to be walking around crying all the time,
Right.
but we need to come to terms with some things and, just allow ourselves to feel what we need to feel as it relates to it, because all of that pent up stress and
Mhm.
disappointment and anger and all of that turns into something not healthy at all in our
Mhm.
minds. And we need to release,
Right.
we need to let it go. All right. Solomon said, that's my home, Belmont Heights. So I guess that's a part of Tampa, maybe. I'm not sure, I guess. You're not familiar with Belmont Heights?
I'm not.
Okay. All
I
right.
don't
Well,
know I don't know all the cities that make up Tampa Bay, but
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. All
Okay.
right. He said, thanks to both of y'all. It was appreciated. Nice. Our pleasure, Solomon. All right, Warren, can use her information for the discussion we had about my daughter? Can't you give her my info? How about I'm gonna give you her info and you contact her? How about that? I'll do that, Warren. All right. And then Tara, some of us do not know how to live any other way, and it is so sad.
Yeah.
It is sad, Tara. It is. But we're trying to do better. That's why Conversations with Nicole is here to help plant
Mhm.
and water the seeds of being our best selves. So,
Right.
encouraging folks to get their checkup from the neck up, get with a counselor, get with a therapist today. Listen, Key is waiting on y'all. Call her. Call her up, please. Yes, call her up, call her up. And, I think we can definitely be in denial about our need for counseling, but I
Right.
do believe that every Black person in America needs counseling. If they have had to contend with the things that we have had to contend with here, they need some counseling. They need some therapy. They need
Right.
some healing. So
Mhm.
be your best self. Be your best self. Peel back those layers and get the help you need. Get the
Right.
help you need. Yeah. So, for those that may be watching that may be new to the platform, I invite folks to subscribe to Conversations with Nicole on YouTube. We're here Mondays and Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, talking about mental health and wellness in Black and Brown communities primarily, and subscribing and supporting. And we need all the support we can get. So, we will have Jasmine Richardson Sutton on Wednesday, who is the founder of Chocolate Wasted Fitness, on talking about the line dance community, because line dancing
Mhm.
has taken off with the boots on the ground and all of that, right? So she and I are actually part of the Tallahassee line dance class, and we'll be celebrating our 2-year anniversary on, I think it's August 23rd, whatever that Saturday is. And so, but beyond the celebration, we just want to talk about, the community that is
Mhm.
built in the dance world. So tune in Wednesday, 8:30 right here. Hope to see y'all then. And thank you so much, Key, for coming on and talking about this topic. Hopefully we have set some captives free tonight. And just shared a little bit about the importance of trauma informed care among people of color. So I appreciate you.
Mhm. And thank you for having me.
My pleasure. All right, y'all. We'll see y'all next time.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.